Have you identified some cuts that you're really looking at that you think will be successful? Do you think the $2 trillion is a realistic number now that you're looking more closely at it?
Yeah, well, I think we'll try for $2 trillion. I think that's like the best case outcome, but I do think that you kind of have to have some overage. I think if we try for $2 trillion, we've got a good shot at getting one. And if we can drop the budget deficit from $2 trillion to $1 trillion, and kind of free up the economy to have additional growth, such that the output of goods and services it keeps pace with the increase in the money supply, then there will be no inflation.
Right.
So that I think would be an epic outcome.
In the latest edition of MAGA's slow realization that Elon Musk and Donald Trump played them, Elon stumbled through his admission that he was just messing around when he confidently promised to cut in at least $2 trillion from the budget.
But we set up Doge.
Yes.
How much do you think we can rip out of this wasted $6.5 trillion Harris-Biden budget?
Well, I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
Yes.
$2 trillion.
Yeah, well, I think we'll try for $2 trillion. I think that's like the best case outcome.
We can do at least $2 trillion. At least $2 trillion.
But I do think that you kind of have to have some overage. I think if we try for $2 trillion, we've got a good shot at getting one.
Before Donald Trump and Elon Musk explicitly proved to the country that white supremacist privilege gets legitimized without any merit and gets a pass at every failure that it encounters, we used to rake people over the coals for flip-flopping and held them to account for their records. But this movement was never about accomplishments, and it was never about accountability or representing the people that voted for them. Now, I know it's been a long time, like a couple of months, but remember, Trump campaigned on lowering grocery prices.
I went on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries.
A vote for Trump means your groceries will be cheaper.
It'll also bring your grocery bill way down. I have more complaints on groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs.
Where the price of bacon, the price of lettuce, the price of tomatoes. Bacon, lettuce, tomato, everything is so much higher than it ever was.
We're going to bring those prices way down.
Because people can't afford their groceries, and they're going to be affording their groceries very soon.
And before you could say, make America great again, he took that shit right back.
Saying, look, they got them up. I'd like to bring them down. It's hard to bring things down once they're up. It's very hard, but I think that they will. I think that energy is going to bring them down. I think a better supply chain is going to bring them down.
Donald Trump promised MAGA, while pushing back on experts and 18-year-olds taking their first year of economics, that his tariff plan wouldn't cost American consumers a dime.
A tariff is a tax on a foreign country. That's the way it is, whether you like it or not. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's a tax on us. No. It's a tax on a foreign country. It's a tax on a country that's ripping us off and stealing our jobs. And it's a tax that doesn't affect our country. And they'll have to pay, and they'll pay hundreds of billions of dollars in pretty stiff tariffs.
It's not a tax on the middle class. It's a tax on another country. If you look at McKinley, who was actually a great president, he made the country rich. It's probably the richest we ever were, relatively. But he taxed countries for coming in and taking our jobs, for bringing us their product, for taking away our factories because they would make it and come in. And he taxed them. It was called a tariff. And it's not a tax on people.
McKinley was assassinated after his tariff plan benefited the most wealthy business owners, at the same time raising costs on the working class. And once Donald Trump's confident ignorance got him elected, he pulled the rug out from under his working class voters again.
Trump was also asked about how his tariff policies might impact prices for American consumers.
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries.
The guy that based his political career on railing on immigration from the moment he waltzed down his escalator promised his anti-immigrant flock that he'd eliminate H-1B visas because they explicitly screw over red-blooded American workers for the sake of those filthy foreigners.
The H-1B very well, and it's something that I frankly use, and I shouldn't be allowed to use. We shouldn't have it. Very, very bad for workers. And second of all, I think it's very important to say, well, I'm a businessman, and I have to do what I have to do, and it's sitting there waiting for you, but it's very bad. It's very bad for business in terms of, it's very bad for our workers, and it's unfair for our workers, and we should end it. Recently, the CEO of the Tennessee Valley Authority, Jeffrey Lyash, made a disastrous and heartless decision. The TVA announced that it would lay off over 200 American workers and replace them with cheaper foreign workers brought in from overseas. The Tennessee Valley Authority leadership then ordered the American workers to train their foreign replacements, rubbing salt in their very open wounds. As we speak, we're finalizing H-1B regulations so that no American worker is replaced ever again. H-1Bs should be used for top, highly paid talent to create American jobs, not as inexpensive labor program to destroy American jobs.
But when that same guy that just took back his promise to cut at least $2 trillion of spending explicitly said that he likes his employees smarter and cheaper than their voters, MAGA man turned his back on them and agreed with Elon.
President-elect Trump supporting Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy after the two backed H-1B visas for foreign workers, telling the New York Post, quote, "I've always liked the visas. I've always been in favor of the visas. That's why we have them. I have many H-1B visas on my properties. I've been a believer in H-1B. I've used it many times. It's a great program."
He was so sure MAGA wouldn't turn on him that he said all that while Elon told them to f themselves in the face and that he'd go to war with them on it. So much for their backing of the Second Amendment in case their well-armed militias need to rise up against an authoritarian government that's jerking them around, right? Think about it. Elon told them that he'd go to war over this, and they tucked their tails and ran from the fight, off to f themselves in the face like he told them to.
Why'd you change your mind on H-1B visas, sir?
I didn't change my mind. I've always felt we have to have the most competent people in our country. We need competent people. We need smart people coming into our country. And we need a lot of people coming in. We're going to have jobs like we've never had before.
But sir, you said you changed your position.
He doesn't need to answer any more of your questions on his complete lack of respect for all the people that he knows will support him despite his flip-flops. But I have to remind y'all, one last thing that MAGA leadership shamelessly told their supporters on the campaign trail was a core part of their principles. That he's no warmonger, just some magical figure that makes foreign leaders quiver in fear and get in line just from the thought of his presence.
Viktor Orban, a very strong leader from Hungary, Prime Minister of Hungary, they asked him recently about what's the problem in the world. A few years ago, during my term, we had no problem. We didn't have Israel being attacked. We didn't have Russia attacking Ukraine. And they asked him, why is it so bad now? The Middle East is on fire. What's the problem? He said, you have to bring Trump back as president of the United States. You will have no problem. He single-handedly kept things, and it's true. Now, he used a term I wouldn't use. He said everybody was afraid of Trump. You know who was afraid of Trump? They said China was afraid of Trump. Russia was afraid of Trump. They were all.
We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists and the deep state, the Pentagon, the State Department, and the national security industrial complex. One of the reasons I was the only president in generations who didn't start a war is that I was the only president who rejected the catastrophic advice of many of Washington's generals, bureaucrats, and the so-called diplomats who only know how to get us into conflict, but they don't know how to get us out.
Autocrats and dictators are frozen in fear when he speaks, so you can be sure that your sons and daughters won't be sent off to spill their blood and cause unrest in the world. That is, until he got elected and started saying the exact opposite.
Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you. You're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something.
So these guys know by now that if MAGA hasn't learned yet, they never will. I just hope their fantasy ownership of the libs is satisfying enough for the extreme lack of follow-through on these campaign promises. And since Elon is suddenly lowering expectations for cutting spending of all of our money, shouldn't y'all start wondering what they actually plan to do with it?
It's impossible to avoid him, and he has enormous power because of his money, and B, his reach to people who have been persuaded over the last 5 years or so that the mainstream media hasn't covered any stories, and that the only people who've noticed anything happening in the world are people sitting in their bedrooms sending messages to each other. It's an amazing feat of deception. And I think we should have got on to him early on when he quite gratuitously called someone who was trying to help those boys in Thailand a paedophile. An American court let him off, the pedo guy. I think he thought from then on, I can say anything I like. It doesn't have to be true. It's better if it's not true. And no one will stop me. And that's what's happened.